Welcome to Life Decoded again, where we talk a lot about self-improvement, but never about our partner, about the one who gets us through life most of the time. But unfortunately, in these times, many married couples get divorced. At least in Germany, the numbers are stagnating, but everywhere else, there's still a lot of couples, trying to get it done and getting through marriage without a divorce. And today I'm talking to Jen Mitchell, who has a lot of experience with that.
Yes. Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. For those of you who just stepped in, me and Jen actually started to email 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think the whole process until getting the recording set up was never that long. Sorry on that one. From my side again.
It always works out as it should when it should. So it's beautiful.
Great. So you just told me that you are an attorney who had a lot to do with divorces and everything. And I think in 2014, you started to coach people on divorce. And when we think about a divorce, many of us have the battles, the arguments, all the screaming in the head, just something very, very bad. But you go from a completely different side. I quote that. You said a divorce is not a way to battle or to get destroyed, but more to relive or to better yourself, or even a form of self-improvement.
Absolutely.
How so?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a family law attorney for 19 years. And as you shared, 2014 was a really big year for me. I was in the courtroom for the first 9 years as like a litigation attorney, battling in court and fighting. And then I had kids. And when my kids came in, I was like, there has to be a better way to do this. And so for the last 11 years, I've been really focused on what you just said, like figuring out a way of, how can we shift the way we're looking at divorce? And anyone, I'm sure people who have gone through divorce. I know a lot of people who have gone through divorce, and I've been through divorce myself. And it's a really difficult space to navigate. It's really sad. And, it's heartbreaking, and it's really, it's devastating in many ways, because it is everything you thought the marriage was going to be. It turns out it isn't that. And so that's the space of the reinvention that you just mentioned. It's in those darkest times of our life that we really are given the greatest opportunities to grow. And I think when people are guided through the divorce journey in a mindful way, as opposed to the courtroom, which is fighting.
Yeah.
But when it can be very intentional, and especially when children are involved, where both people can come to the table and say, okay, the relationship in this space of marriage isn't working. It's not serving. It doesn't feel good. So let's mindfully and intentionally shift to another space that does feel really good, and it's in that shift and in that transition that is really, really dark, that all of this growth can come up, and people can use divorce to change their whole life if it's done mindfully.
I can't wait to go deeper on that. But before we go completely to the conclusion of divorces, what are the main causes for that? Because there are so many people getting divorced in this modern day and age. Why? What changed to the old traditional way of marriages?
Yeah, I think, I think the roots, the heart, and the reason for every single divorce is truly it comes down to energy. It's different energy vibrations. And so as we navigate through our marriages, and I think a lot of times when kids come in, I think there's not enough people talking about how much that changes the marriage relationship and the romantic relationship. But as things happen, as children come in, maybe you lose your job, maybe you lose, a parent or another loved one to death, or maybe there are things that happen along the way. And when we go through any of those things, we change, we grow and we change, we learn more about ourselves. And I think that is the root of all divorce is one person has essentially outgrown the other. And maybe when they first were married, they were the same vibration. They liked the same things. They enjoyed spending their time together. The reflections they were each giving each other felt so good and amazing. And, everything was in alignment. And they're like, of course I'm going to marry you. I'm going to spend every day of my life with you. This feels so good. And then over time, when these changes happen and people change, then now we have, one person who may be vibrating at, a higher frequency, if you will, than the other person. And they're trying to make it work. They're trying to connect and reconnect, but they're two different people than they were when they first were married. And so it really is, like even this conversation when I'm saying this, I'm like, it really is it's a really big conversation of, almost redefining marriage in a way where I think the human, social conditioning is like marriage is forever till death do you part. There are good times and bad times and good years and bad years, and it's a compromise and a sacrifice. And I think in the world that we currently live in, I think there's more people standing in their own truth and more people wanting, doing more exploration of self, of who am I and what do I want, and taking inventory of their life. Is this serving me? Is this serving me? Am I happy in my relationship? Am I happy in my job? And they're actually making those steps if the answer is no, whereas I think before maybe people weren't as inclined to focus on themselves so much.
Okay, that's actually crazy to think about that. So many years ago, our parents or grandfathers, they didn't think that much about themselves or what they could do with their life. And
totally.
They didn't change as much as in this modern world, you're saying, right?
Exactly. I think, when I think back to my grandparents, who I was very close with, they lived their lives. They went to their, my grandfather drove a truck and he went to his job every day. My grandmother was home and she would make food for the grandkids. And, it was just, I think people played the role and played the part and they were happy in that space. And I think our consciousness has evolved more now where people are more connected to themselves and really interested in, and I think COVID accelerated things even more, but like really interested in wanting to seek their joy and their happiness. And they're more bold in it of saying, you know what, I'm not going to just stay in this because I'm being told that I have to. I don't feel good in this and I don't think it's working and I don't think it's serving me. And if it's not serving me, it's not serving my spouse, it's not serving our children. And so I want to do something else. And I think people are more inclined to do that nowadays.
Yeah, but also when we don't even talk about divorces, but also just about couples breaking up, the main time frame that is often mentioned in that case is about 6 to 8 months into the relationship. All of the love hormones, or we call it the pink glasses, are put off, and you see your partner as the one he really is, in quote marks, and when you even go over that point, go through all of the hormones and all that stuff, you go into marriage, then still how quickly can this process to go from now everything is happy at our marriage, now we're done, this is the divorce.
Yeah.
What was the shortest time frame you saw in between those 2 points, the marriage and the divorce? Is there any crazy stories you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think back. So I've been doing this for 19 years. So I've been doing it for a really long time. And it's always different of how long. I think the shortest one, or shortest, journeys that I've worked with are less than a year, and usually in those cases, something happened, something major happened. It isn't like what we were just talking about of like, this discovery of self, of who am I and what do I want? It's usually something major happened. And it could be something really surprising and shocking, to the other spouse of like what you just shared. Maybe they didn't know the person the way, really know the person before they were married. It kind of was those rose-colored glasses. But yeah, I mean, in my belief system, I believe that every marriage lasts exactly as long as it's meant to last. And some of them are forever. Some of them are the entire lifespan. I think most of them nowadays aren't. But I also, in saying that, it's not minimizing, that container of marriage. I think the container of marriage is a really sacred space, for two people to occupy. It's a really beautiful space. And the people, when they come into that space, they change so much. I mean, ask anyone, even if they're going through a terrible divorce right now, or if they've been through a terrible divorce and they can't stand their ex-spouse, everyone across the board can absolutely say, the person I was the day before I met my spouse and the person I am now are very different people. And it's the learning and the growth that happens in that container of relationship. And the way I explain it to my clients is it's almost like if my arm is your life journey, your partner came in right at that time, whatever time that person was meant to come in. And if we can look at that container and be so grateful for everything that happened in there, all of the learnings. When children come in, it's like, come on, you could have kids with anyone in the whole world, but they wouldn't be those kids without that person at that exact moment in time, So there's so much to be really grateful for. And I think that oftentimes, like when I was a litigation attorney for the first 9 years of my career, that was totally missed. We never talked about gratitude in court, of how grateful I am that this person was in my life, and how grateful I am for these beautiful children, and how grateful I am to have learned so much about myself and grown so much, and all the good times and all the bad times. Like, gratitude is such a powerful emotional space to be in, because when you're in that space of gratitude, that's when you can get out of that mucky, stuff that most people, when they're going through a divorce and after, stay in. And they're really uncomfortable and feel really bad.
Okay, so just to clarify, your standpoint is that there are no bad marriages. There is only the good one for you and your self-development, and every single marriage has something positive for your life.
Well, every single marriage has whatever was in that marriage, the good stuff, the hard stuff, the bad stuff, the heartbreaking stuff. It was all meant for you, for the person receiving. And that's what's so cool in the work that I do now for the last decade plus, is I get to work with both people in the divorce. When I litigated, I could only work with one. But now as a mediator, I'm still a licensed attorney. I still do my continuing legal education credits and all of those things. But in the capacity of mediator, I can work with both people. And I'm always fascinated, because part of the solace journey, the first question that they're asked, that they share in the mediation space, is, how did you get here? What is your version of the truth of how things led to this point? Because no one who gets married, well, almost no one, but hopefully, almost no one who gets married thinks that they're going to be divorced. And so I always ask them, what is your truth? How did you see things kind of going off the rails? And it's always so interesting, because you have these two people who have lived in the same relationship and marriage, and they have two very different ways of seeing everything. So all of that is to circle back to, yes, I believe that the marriage, the container of marriage, each person gets exactly what they are meant to receive from that relationship, in the form of learnings, in the form of growth, in the form of gifts, children and opportunities, and maybe moving to different places that they never would have moved to had their spouse not brought them there. Like things like that. There's like a bigger orchestration going on, and that relationship is always guiding us along our path, for sure.
Okay. Wow. Very, very interesting. And when talking about divorces and how you mediate them and everything, there was one phrase that I couldn't get my mind around it. It's the fifth dimensional divorce, and
Yes.
how it is better than a traditional one. So first, could you please explain what the five dimensional space is? Because I only know 1D, 2D, and 3D from the movies, and 4D
Yes.
a bit, but the fifth dimensional is hard to imagine.
Yeah, and the fifth dimension. So that's a really good question. And it's interesting because It's a very good question because some people are really turned off by this question. So I want to be mindful of people I don't want to scare people away. But really the fifth dimension and the third dimension are here simultaneously, so the fifth dimension has always been here, and it's all energy, it goes back to, and I always bring up Albert Einstein because everybody knows Albert Einstein and everyone knows how smart he was. And this is what he focused his whole career on, is energy. And so the fifth dimension and the third dimension are here at the same time. They coexist. They just have different energy vibrations to them. So the fifth is higher than the third. And so the third dimensional divorce, like an easy way to explain it, and really in answering this question, there is a shift that is happening in the human consciousness to this higher space, and the fifth dimensional energies are rooted in freedom, joy, bliss, love, abundance, expansiveness, growth. Those, even when I say them, it's like, oh, it feels so good. It's a higher vibration. The third dimension is a lot heavier. The third dimension is like pride, ego, fear, power, control, winning, that's those kind of energies. And I know, like in our society today, you can strongly feel these third dimensional energies that are at play, and a lot of people could even talk about wars and all of the, corporate stuff and the medical industry and like all of these things with the evil powers behind it, whatever those conspiracy theories may be, but it's very much rooted in this third dimensional way of thinking. And the third dimension is very much about, making sure you're good, like just kind of like the power, the control, the greed. It's like wanting to take. And that is, I think, from my 9 years in the court system, the family law court system as a litigation attorney, I feel that that's the way that it's done. It's very, it's very right, wrong, good, bad. There's labels on everything. It's very external. He did this. She said this. Well, you're right and she's wrong and you should win and she should lose. It's like, and you have one person who's making all these decisions. And it's very much rooted in that mindset of scarcity and fear and overwhelm. The fifth dimensional divorce is aligned with the work that I do. It's rooted in love. It's rooted in mindfulness and intentionality and gratitude, like I shared, and forgiveness and, acceptance of yourself, acceptance of your partner, acceptance of this happening. And it's instead of like win, I need to win, I need to take to win. The mediation space it's collaborative. It's like you're not taking or winning, you're negotiating, and usually one person is here and the other person is here. And we're navigating this middle space of creation with all of those vibrations of the fifth dimension present, all of those vibrations that are, the freedom, the bliss, the joy. It's like intentionally creating what relationship space you want to go into next, and understanding that in order to get there from the marriage relationship to this new relationship space that the two people are creating. And of course, when there are children involved, it's like, well, what kind of family do you want? How do you want your kids to feel? How do you want to feel when you talk to this person for the rest of your life? Because that's what's going to be happening. You're in a relationship forever. But we can be very mindful in that shift from one to the other, and very intentional. We can call in love. And I always coach my clients, there's so many types of love. And there's so many forms of relationship. And that is more fifth dimensional, where it's not so black and white. The third dimensional is like I said, there's a lot of right, wrong, good, bad. You're married and you love each other, or you're divorced and you hate each other. And there's nothing in between. Whereas the fifth dimensional way of being is more, it's more loving. It's more forgiving. It's more understanding, we're human and we're on this life experience and we did our best and we did everything we could. And I really loved you, when we were in that marriage space, and now I feel differently. And the other person, who receives that news then, is forced to kind of catch up. But it's such a gift, and we value authenticity. And that's a very fifth dimensional thing too, is living authentically, recognizing who I am and what do I want and how can I best serve those that I love and how can I make this world a better place, and really sitting in alignment with that, throughout the mediation journey. So it's a very different approach for sure to divorce.
Very, very different. So just to simply break it down, you have the traditional divorce where one tries to get the kids or to get the house or get the money, just the narcissistic stuff and everything to get everything, the best out of something worse something bad happened, and you try to get the best out of it. And what you do is trying to make a win-win situation for both sides.
Totally.
Where no side wins completely, but both sides don't lose too much. That's the easiest way to get around it? Okay.
That's a beautiful way. Yeah. And with mediation, a lot of people don't even know mediation exists, and
yeah,
what were you gonna say?
In Germany we have a lot of mediation. Even I was a mediator in the high school.
I love that.
Yeah. But only for the school conflicts on the park bench and everything. So nothing big.
That is so cool.
But mediator or Streitschlichter, like we call them in Germany, they're a big thing, like everywhere.
Good.
Actually,
that's amazing.
But besides court, yeah. And in divorce, nobody talked about mediation when coming to divorce. But every time we have any corporate issues here or team issues at work, the first thing done is always to consulate a mediator. In Germany, at least. I don't know where it is in other countries, but yeah, that's why we are very familiar with that. But the first time I heard it in connection with divorce, and you do that now for over a decade. So after all this experience, does it always work out better for both sides, or were there cases where one member or one part of the divorce wanted more but didn't get it?
I mean, I think a lot of times people, it ends up in a space exactly what you said earlier. It's not exactly what either one, like their desired result, but it ends up in a space where they both feel good about it. And that is, and that's the thing when it comes to divorce. It's so interesting to me. The longer I've been outside of court, the more I'm like, I can't believe that this is how we go through divorce in the courtroom setting, because each person has their own attorney, and here, they're billing in 6-minute increments, and they're advocating on behalf of their client as a zealous advocate. And then we have a complete stranger who's wearing a robe, looking very important, making decisions about people's children and about their property and their money and support and all of these things, where it's just like, what is going on? Like, I just, and I think that's the biggest gift of mediation is they get an end result that maybe isn't exactly what they wanted, but it's good enough for them to feel good and to go to court and say, yes, Your Honor, this is what we agreed to. Yes, Your Honor, this feels good. And I think the bigger gift of mediation, the biggest gift, is they avoid that entire court process, which I do the longer I'm away from it. And I've had a couple scenarios where I've interacted with judges and other attorneys, and it's so off-putting to me at this point. And I almost feel like it's kind of a scam. And I say that truly because the attorney, when you really step back and think about it, it's like, okay, now you have two people going through a divorce. They're very emotional, of course, because it's one of the hardest experiences of their lives. And they're very scared. And most people don't feel empowered to say, you know what, I could do this. I could talk with my spouse and we could figure it out. Most people don't have that kind of sense of autonomy or authority. And so they hide behind their attorney. And the thing is, the attorneys are getting paid in 6-minute increments. And their job is to zealously represent their client. And so, of course, in a divorce, one person's, what's in the best interest of one person is going to be very different than what's in the best interest of the other. And I don't know how it works in Germany, but in the United States, these attorneys that are billing every 6 minutes, they're incurring more fees for their clients. They're not talking to each other because why would they talk to each other? Why would they resolve this case? If they resolve this case, they're not having any more billable hours. And the court
Wow.
system, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
It's
this
really
is
a
where I'm
scam,
at now.
yeah.
And they're all friends. Like, that was part of it too. When I was a litigation attorney, and you even look at, and I don't know Germany, but in the United States, the way the courtrooms are structured, in the first, like, third or quarter of the courtroom, you have the judge who's elevated, wearing a robe, looking very important, sitting above everybody else. And then we have like the next like half, like, up until, like half of the courtroom is all like nice tables with really comfy chairs. And that's where all the attorneys sit. So that's where I would sit with all my fellow litigation attorneys. And then in the back quarter of the courtroom, there's a physical barrier, like a wooden door thing, and wooden benches that are super uncomfortable. And that's where the real people who have real children with real property, whose real lives are being impacted by what's happening in this courtroom, that's where they're sitting.
They
And
don't
the
even
attorneys
sit beside their attorney? They don't even sit beside their
no,
attorney?
I mean they do if they're, if it's like a trial, they do. And when our case is called, then they come up to the bench with us and
But
we
other than
stand.
that,
But other than that, they're back there, and all the attorneys
wow.
are friends. Well, not all friends, but everyone knows each other. The judges are attorneys, so it's kind of like a boys' club with girls invited. And I feel like it's become this. I think when it probably first was created, the court system, and I'm focusing solely on family law because that's where my expertise lies. I don't know about all the others, but family law, where it's real people and real families and real children. I think when it started, I think it was very different than where it is now. And I think where it is now, it's gotten to the point where it is absolutely ridiculous. And you have people who have no idea what's going on. And they believe their social programs are telling them, my attorney is smart. My attorney is looking out for me. My attorney has my best interest in mind. And it's like, this is a job for your attorney. Your attorney genuinely probably doesn't really care about you or your children. And the judge doesn't either, because the judge is overwhelmed with cases. There's no way that a judge can know every detail of every case. And so that's the bigger mission that I have through the work that I'm doing, is to educate people and saying, look, you do not need to use that system. You can if you want, but I really think that system should be reserved for like the 5% of cases that need it, like involving abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, narcissists. That's a tricky area. Those kind of cases, sure. Have a judge tell you, this is due at this date. You need to get this done, like making sure everything is done. And if we could get 95% of the cases out of court because they don't need to be there, they really don't. Like, the best people to determine what is in the best interest of their children, I think, are the parents. They know these kids better than anyone else. So, of course, they know it's in their best interest. And I also think that the two people of the divorce, the marriage and divorce, are the best people to determine what's fair and equitable when it comes to finances. It's like, why are we giving our power away to this judge and these attorneys?
But how did it come so far? I mean, the idea in general is a good one. You have those two very, very emotional people going through a divorce, and you try to get all of the emotion out of there by getting extra people talking for them, but knowing what the person wants who is in a divorce. And then you have a middleman who is trying to get the middle ground. But like you said before, there is just so much hate and egoism and everything around it. How did it come so far? Because you yourself said at the first times in court, it wasn't like it is today, years later.
Yeah, I think we become smarter. I think humans, we become smarter. And I really think the social consciousness, those like, I call them programs, but just like ways of being and ways of thinking when it comes to divorce. Like, it's so reinforced. Divorce is terrible. It's a battle. You're going to spend years in court. You're going to spend hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. You're going to hate your spouse. Your kids are going to be negatively impacted. Like, all of these narratives continually being being shared and people in the courtroom experiencing those things. So they're further contributing. I think it just has led to a space where this has become normal. This has become normalized. This has become the way divorce is. And that's what I am sharing with the world is this isn't the way divorce is. This is one option for sure. But I think that this is an absolute ridiculous option from a human standpoint. It's like, why would you want to, you've worked so hard for your money. You've worked so hard to raise your children and, really inspire your children and love them and provide them with a beautiful life. Why are you going to go into this stupid, broken, scammy system and have all of that taken away from you for what? And I think really the key message that needs to be shared with people is you can do this. You can mediate your divorce. It really is not that hard. You're the best people to do it. You know everything. The people who are getting a divorce, they know everything. They know their children better than anyone else. And they've lived every day in their marriage and every day in their relationship. They know all the financial stuff. They know who did what. You know what I mean? It's like they're the authorities. And I think that's another, it's very interesting as I'm talking about this because that is a very fifth dimensional way of being, is stepping into a space of empowerment, of saying, this is who I am and this is what I believe and this is my truth. And also recognizing I am not the end all be all. And I'm not saying that I'm right in speaking my truth. I'm just speaking my truth, but I'm also open to hearing other points of view. And I'm open to going in this middle space,
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So, but going deeper, there is the special case going through my head. Like you said before, there are some cases where nearly a few months after the marriage, the couple just breaks up. They get a divorce because something major happened. Maybe one partner cheated on the other. In these very, very, very hard cases, how is it possible to mediate through it when there is nearly this black and white situation? You definitely know that one person did something major wrong and the other person maybe didn't do anything, but of course there's always two sides to it. But when there is this big difference between those two sides and it's nearly black and white, how do you go about this case?
Yeah, I love that question. And infidelity is always so interesting to me when it presents. And I'm actually putting together a Solace University that's going to have a video it's going to be the mirror exercise, but it's everything that I'm about to share with you. So anytime there's infidelity or really anything, I mean, infidelity is a real big trigger, but there's always so many different things that are triggering in any divorce. But infidelity especially, so I walk my clients through this mirror exercise of, again, it's not, this is very, again, going to fifth dimensional, we'll say, but it's not about what the other person is saying and doing. So like the other person had an affair. And that's very third dimensional. In the courtroom setting, especially when there are children, that's going to be brought up. That's going to be brought up because the attorney of the other person is going to want the judge to know what that person did, that person cheated and that person's bad, But in this other way of looking at it, it's an opportunity to ask, okay, it's not what he or she did. It's more, how is it making me feel? And I know when I say that, it's like, it's kind of maybe hard to grasp the power of it. But it is very, very powerful. So infidelity, whenever there is that in any journey, I always try to shift the energy by saying, it's not like he or she woke up one morning and was like, I think I'm going to have sex with someone else today. It doesn't work that way. It's like a progression over time. That person wasn't getting what that person needed from the relationship and then saw it or felt it in someone else. And and that's the other part, being authentic, being honest. If we could normalize this, if we could normalize that things change and sometimes people change the way they feel about other people and that's okay, I don't think there would be as many affairs because people would talk about it right away before the affair happened. They would say, you know what? I was walking on the street today and I met this person and I was I don't know what happened. I just feel something and I'm being called to explore that and I want to explore that. Well, that's different than being in the container of marriage and all of a sudden there's this affair that has come out. And that's because the person hasn't spoken their truth to their partner and now they have like a secret life a lot of the times. So in mediation, I walk them through this mirror exercise that really gives them the opportunity to figure out why this is presenting in their life. And it's not to hurt them. You know, it's bigger than that. It's not to hurt them. It's for them to learn from it. And again, it's not about what the person said or did. It's about how is that making you feel? The person receiving this, how is that making you feel? That's the important, that is where the gems of divorce come. Because in the beginning of the relationship, in the beginning of the marriage, when they're with each other, they feel amazing. You know, the reflection that the other person is giving them is, oh my gosh, I'm so beautiful. I'm so smart. I'm so fun. I'm so amazing. It's all these things like we talked about, right? But in the space of divorce, the reflections are still very, very powerful. But now what the other person is showing you is more the darker things of your internal worlds, of your belief system. And so in the case of infidelity, the question in the mirror exercise that I always ask my clients is, okay, first, how is this making you feel? And of course, angry, disappointed, grossed out. Those are easy, but really, how is it making you feel? You know, it's making me feel unworthy of love. It's making me feel like I'm not good enough. You know, those are the deeper things, right? And then I ask them, okay, have you felt this way in other relationships, romantic or friendship? You know, have you felt the way that you're feeling from this experience? And the answer to that is yes, they have. And so that means that the external, and then, you know, I walk them through, well, what did that person do to make you feel that way? And sometimes it's the same, infidelity. Sometimes it's different, but usually it's the same. And then I bring them to, and the beauty of that is they're different scenarios usually. If it's infidelity, it's a totally different scenario. Maybe this one in the marriage is like, if it's a man stepping outside of the marriage, maybe it's with her sister, you know, something real jarring. Whereas maybe the other one was in college and it was with like someone that they mutually knew or something. It wasn't as strong. But then I take them to their childhood and I ask them, okay, did you ever feel this way as a child? Or did you witness someone else in your circle, primarily your main caregivers, your parents, feeling this way? And yes. So that's the way that we can remove the charge and remove the external of like labeling, you know, he did this, he destroyed our marriage. He was all bad. It's not that. It's a progression of time. It's both people playing their parts exactly the way that they're meant to. And both people, if we can, shifting away from the external and shifting internal and really figuring out, okay, what was I supposed to learn from this? Like, what am I carrying within me? Those notions of self-worth or unloved or being second best or having to fight for someone's love, or you know what I mean? And all of us have our own things, but that is the gift of divorce. That's the gift of infidelity too. You know, it's like, and then standing in your truth and in your love and self-respect and responding in the way that best suits you, whatever that is. Some people forgive, some people don't, you know, and again, I don't think there's a right, wrong, good or bad. It's every person's own unique journey. And I think if we can, shift to more of a space of love, I think everything would flow better and understanding.
Okay. Wow. So when we talk about those kind of cases and also about how everything changed in the last years and nowadays the people change way faster than years before because mainly of self-improvement and everybody wants to get better and everything. There are most of the times those limiting beliefs. Like when you just said, this is the gift of the divorce. The first limiting belief in my head is a divorce can't have any gifts. It's just
Right.
bad for the children, bad for the parents, bad for everybody involved in the whole situation. But are there any other limiting beliefs that are not that obvious when you have any cases with your people? What are the main limiting beliefs you experienced over there?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's the thing about limiting beliefs. We all have our own, and
Yeah.
I think that's the trickiest part of litigating is that it's so emotional and all of these limiting beliefs are coming up, I think, I think they're across the board. There's a ton of limiting beliefs about abundance. I think and I often wonder, I'm like, is it because we're so close to the Great Depression, like as far as lineage, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
so many people have limiting beliefs about abundance when it comes to divorce. They're very, very, very concerned about money, about being able to make it. I think the limiting beliefs too, just in and of themselves, is what you just said, is divorce. I think divorce has so many limiting beliefs to it. It's a failure. It should be shameful. It should be hard. It's bad for the kids. Everyone around you then has to choose sides. Like all of these, and none of those beliefs are true. None of them, everything that I just said and others that we have brought up earlier, none of them are true. None of them are true. They have been true for other people, sure. Of course, people that use the court system across the board.
And they sound so right. They sound so right when you tell them. Every time I think about the divorce, that are the beliefs that are in my head.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just you. That's what's so wild. It's like, it really is across the board. It's this weird, that's why I love to, like my master class is called Divorce with Love. And I love that. I love putting the word love, the energies of love with divorce, because it kind of scrambles people's brains. They're like, what is she talking about? Divorcing with love? It's like, yes, it's almost like the Matrix. It's like all of the things that you were told, anyone listening about divorce, they're not true. They were true for the person who shared it. Of course, that was their experience, their own personal experience. And it's been true for millions of people. And I feel like I'm at a point in my career now where I really am getting very vocal about, like when I said the court system, I do believe it's a scam. I mean, I recently just emailed the presiding judge of a district that I'm licensed in the state of Illinois. And I emailed the presiding judge asking why the judges in her division are so awful to pro se litigants, meaning litigants, and those are my clients. They don't have attorneys to go to court because they have everything done. They've created everything. They don't need attorneys coming in, talking in their ear, scaring them, saying, oh, you could have gotten this, you could have done this. But what I'm seeing more and more now is that there are more judges that are giving pro se litigants, so litigants that don't have attorneys, that use mediation, already resolved everything, they're giving them a very hard time. And they're being mean to them, and they're making them come back multiple times. And one judge, this was when I referenced earlier that I've had a couple interactions with some judges and attorneys as of late. I went to a court call. I appeared, and I wasn't named as an attorney of record. I was there as the mediator for two people, that were getting a divorce. It was their third time there. The first two, I asked them what happened. I don't understand. Why didn't the judge sign off on your documents? And they didn't understand because the judge is talking all of this legal stuff that they don't understand. It's scaring them. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. So I went to the court and I told the judge, I'm not an attorney of record. I am a licensed attorney, but I'm not an attorney of record for either of these people. I'm really just here to understand why their documents aren't being signed, because they agreed to all of the agreements concerning their daughter. They made those decisions and agreements, and they had very mindful conversations, and they did the same for their financial agreements. And so I'm not understanding why you're not signing off. And the judge told me because they need to have an attorney. And I said, well, with all due respect, Your Honor, they don't need to have an attorney. They don't. They can be pro se litigants. They don't need one. And then the judge told me, Miss Love, they need an attorney to tell them if their agreements are right. And I was like, with all due respect, Your Honor, these two are the best two people to determine what's in the best interest of their daughter and what's fair and equitable for financial. And so, yeah, I just sent that email because I do feel it's getting out of control. And my heart is like, there's so much going on right now in this human consciousness. Like even today is 999. It will come out at a different day maybe, but when we're recording, it's 999. September 9th and 2025, that year is a 9. And
yeah, I was always thinking about the next 9. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we're in 999, and 9 is the number of the end of a cycle, the completion of a cycle. And I do feel that that is one of my reasons that I am here in this world, is to shift the way people are doing this, because there's so many other things going on in this world. And I think people are being distracted by all this external stuff and stress and like the programs of divorce must be this and the limiting beliefs. It's like, doesn't need to be any of that. Instead of spending all that time and all that money and having all that stress and disempowerment where you're shifting into the victim, instead of doing that, you can be empowered to go through this with your spouse and talk. And of course, having the guidance of a mediator, like you said, in Germany, mediation is really big. I mean, you know the power of it because it takes the charge off, you know, and I do everything via Zoom. So they're in different spaces. But yeah, I think the time has come that we need to spend more time on ourselves, on our children, on our relationships, on what we're doing in this world. And in order to do that, we need to have the time and space to do it. And I think, you know, when people are getting a divorce, okay, you're going through one of the hardest times in your life, but we can do it in a way where you can learn from it and you can heal from it and you can grow from it. And it can take you months and a fraction of the cost where you're in control instead of having some random stranger wearing a robe telling you what to do.
So what you're saying is completely making sense in my head.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, no,
I'm so glad.
Of course, I don't have any personal experience or anything to back it up, but
yeah,
just thinking about the way better space from the courtroom you just described a few minutes ago to the Zoom call on your couch. Of course, it's all about the environment and everything. And then you telling me that there are actually people who try to put obstacles into the way of this new way of getting through a divorce is actually crazy to think about. How long do you think will it take for this whole shift? I mean, this is the first time I heard about it. I don't know many people talking about this new way of a divorce. Mm-hmm. Are you just getting started, or is that happening at the moment over there in America and we over there in Europe just don't?
No, I think so. For me, I mean, it's been a journey. I think it's been 11 years in this space of like really figuring out and working with hundreds of couples to like figure out what works, what doesn't work, how can we shift it? And then, you know, I think anyone out there listening who's a business owner, you included, you know, from doing this podcast, like, you know, that your business is an extension of yourself. And so I've been on my own journey of, you know, spiritual growth and understanding of who I am and what I want and understanding the laws of the universe and all of those things. And so I feel it's taken this long to really understand, okay, this is what it is. And I can talk about it and I can explain it and I can do it. And now I can train more attorneys to do this. I just started creating attorney continuing legal education credits. And I'm focusing solely on family law attorneys first, but teaching them about energy, teaching them about the bigger picture of the work that they are doing. Like, these are real people with real children. These are real families. And after this shift from divorce, you know, married to co-parents, and my intention is always friends, you know, they have to parent these children and live their lives, you know, like bigger picture. Let's make this better for everybody. And that's the other piece that we haven't even talked about. It's not just the people, it's the attorneys are really struggling I think family law attorneys are struggling. I think there's a lot of alcoholism. There's a lot of drug use. They're very stressed, and if you look at like the least happy of attorneys, which I think attorneys are the least happiest profession, but the least happy of them are family law attorneys. And then second to that are criminal attorneys. And so I just think, that's indicative. It's a broken system. And I almost feel like it's like sick, and I mean sick, like illness, like you just had, and my boys just had, like a sickness, like it's like a sickness, and it just needs to be healed. That's all. And it can be healed. It just is going to take, and that's why I started focusing on the attorneys it's because to answer your question, no, we are not there yet. In the United States, we are not here yet. I'm at a point in my career where I'm being very vocal about all of this. And I'm at a point in my practice where I am bringing in more attorneys to do the work that I'm doing. And that's part of the reason for these continuing legal education credits, is to help these attorneys because they're miserable, and if you have miserable people who are working within this broken, destructive system, that's just creating more brokenness and more destruction because they're just continuing to feed that really gross space. You know what I mean? Whereas, so I feel the approach that I'm taking, at least, is help heal the attorneys, help give them some tools and some resources to really maintain their energy and better understand where they're at emotionally and mentally and physically and spiritually, and help them shift out of their own programs, which in law school, that's what we're trained to do. We're trained to litigate. We're trained to work crazy amount of hours every week and to fight for our client. And we could be disbarred, meaning we wouldn't have our license anymore, if we're not acting as zealous advocate for our clients. And a lot of times I think these family law attorneys know that what they're doing is really damaging and really destructive and really harmful. But they're doing it not because they're jerks, but because that's their job. And so I think if we could shift the way they're seeing that too, of saying there's another way you can do it. You can use your expertise and beautiful brains for good. You can do good in this world.
Okay, so last question, but let's imagine for a second that you got through it. Most of America or most of the world changed or did the shift to the media-based version.
Yes.
A lot of jobs will be lost because you don't need a judge anymore and you don't need two attorneys anymore for one divorce.
Totally.
What do you say to just that point? How can you counter that? Because a lot of jobs, like you said, in the space of family law attorneys that already have it very, very hard will be lost. And of course, you are somebody who fights against the only thing they have, the job at the moment.
Yeah.
So what is your approach against that?
Well, and that's a really good question. And I think that is what that story I shared about the judge who said they need an attorney to tell them if it's right. That's why I wrote that email, is I asked the presiding judge, are your judges promoting and perpetuating this broken system of having two attorneys? So I do recognize that what I'm saying is going to shift a lot of things, but I don't think their job's lost. I think it's a shift. I think like the way an attorney feels like an attorney has to be, which is the way that they do it now, that's going to change. Like that's why I'm bringing in attorneys to be mediators at Solace, is because we do think a certain way and it is a legal process. And so there is still going to be a need for that legal, beautiful brain and expertise. It's just going to be shifted to a space of good, where they're sharing love with the world. And they're like, my big picture vision is, I have Solace is global, and we have retreats for the people going through divorce, breath work and meditation and going in nature and journaling and doing all of the things that really help them to get through this experience. But I also see the same for attorneys. And I can't wait to host retreats for attorneys, to help them release and shed. And it is going to be those real strong. And there's a lot of attorneys who had parents, one of their or both of their parents were attorneys and their grandfather was an attorney. And it goes on and on and on. And so it's really tight and really, this is what an attorney is. And so we need to change that and say, okay, this isn't what an attorney is. We're going to redefine what being an attorney means and what you do in this world. And I think it's so important because attorneys are a certain type of breed of person. There's a certain type of person that goes to law school. We think a certain way. And then in law school, they basically break down our way of thinking and rebuild it with a totally different way of thinking that is very strategic and is very clean and clear and concise. And there is a great need for that in our world. And I feel if we could shift those people who are in those roles to be in spaces that are promoting good and are sharing their knowledge and their expertise in a way that is loving and that is empowering people as opposed to taking away their power by speaking for them, but really inspiring people and guiding people through the process in a way that's really easy to understand because they know it so well and they can make it easy. And they don't have to spend all this time in court drafting these stupid motions, e-filing, like gross. Like all of that is so I don't think they're going to be jobs lost. I think it's going to be a shift in how it's done. And I think that's going to happen across the board. I think we're going to see that in the medical system, the education system, the political systems. I think there's just I think that the ways of being that have always been are crumbling, cracking and crumbling. They're like moving. It's like, ooh, this isn't working anymore. And so I think it's just going to be a shift. And I think it's going to be a beautiful shift. I think it's going to be beautiful for the attorneys. It's going to be amazing for the people going through a divorce. It's going to be so beautiful for the children, who are these beautiful, innocent beings of light that, their parents aren't going to be married anymore, but they're always going to be their parents. And they're hopefully, they're always going to be in a relationship and hopefully there's love in that relationship and their kids can see that and feel that. And I think, it's everyone working together. So exactly. It's not a lost job, but it's a shift. And who knows? There's so many opportunities for healing too within that space. And there's financial things and parenting things. Like it could be a whole new way of getting a divorce that is completely different from the way now.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds really, really great, and I hope it really works out that way. But at the same time, I hope I never experience it. So
yeah. But if you do, you will come out stronger.
Yeah. At least that I have learned in the last hour. Thank you so much for all the insights and everything you shared with us. Where can people catch up with you or even join your masterclasses if they need to?
Yeah, thank you. So my website is the best place now. It's solacedivorce.com. And as I shared, I'm putting together a Solace University that will be on the website, and the masterclass will be in there, and that mirror exercise that we talked a little bit about when we talked about infidelity. And there'll be a bunch of other videos there for people going through divorce that will just help them. So yeah, the best place is solacedivorce.com. And then I'm also on Facebook and Instagram too, and TikTok and YouTube. But yeah.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Perfect. No, thank you so much for your time. It's the first time I did think so long about a divorce and had a conversation so long about divorces.
You were
so much.
Amazing. Thank you for all your questions were so thoughtful and so mindful. And I'm so appreciative and grateful for your time and for sharing this space together and exploring different ways of looking at divorce together. I really appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers.